The picture you see in front of you is a picture of Greg Abbott, and he is the current governor of the state of Texas. What you may or may not know is that Mr. Abbott is paralyzed from the waist down. And this happened due to an accident that he had when he was, rather young, I believe in his 20s. And I forget what the actual nature of the accident was. But I say that because a lot of the times when people become handicapped, they go one of two ways. Either they feel like the world is against them and they have a sour outlook on life, or they feel like they have an opportunity to do good things. And when they obtain positions of authority, and I will grant you, it's not all that common that a handicapped person obtains a position of authority. The decision they make on which way they're going to look at the world can have rather dramatic consequences. Now, I'm saying all this because Greg Abbott, the former Attorney General of Texas, basically decided that he really doesn't give a damn about regular people. Yeah, I know he's the governor of Texas and regular people had to elect him, and basically Texas is a Republican state, so he basically had to expound the Republican talking points, viewpoints, etc. And his path to success in political office would not have been as great as if he were, let's say, an independent or a Democrat. But I say all that because this guy basically doesn't give a damn about the safety and welfare of the people of Texas. Now, you're going to question me when I say that because of his TV coverage, and he's out there, quote unquote, spearheading the rescue effects and all of the operations regarding all the rain that's going on in the state of Texas, and in particular Houston. But there's a method to his madness as far as Houston is concerned. If you're not aware of it, Houston is the fourth largest city in the country. You got Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and then Houston. It has approximately 6 million people in it. And Houston, again, if you're not aware of it, basically votes Democratic. So for a Republican to give a damn about a Democratic-leaning city might be considered a bit unusual, but we have to lift up the covers. The reason Mr. Abbott really gives a damn about the city of Houston is because of the business that flows through the city of Houston. Okay, again, if you're not aware of it, approximately 1/3 of the gasoline production for the entire country basically is touched by Houston, i.e. refineries, shipping, etc. That's big business, and that's basically a Republican ballywick as far as supporting big business. Also, if you're not aware of it, Houston is one of the leading cities in the country as far as chemical production is concerned. And again, big business, Mr. Abbott definitely is going to look, to help them out. Now, I've said all this because Mr. Abbott has bent over backwards, both as the Attorney General and the Governor, to support big business, and in particular, the chemical industry. Now, I previously had said that he doesn't give a damn about the ordinary citizen in the state of Texas. And here's why. A couple of years ago, there was a chemical plant. It was a fertilizer plant, actually, in the city of West Texas. That is, the city's name is West, and it is in Texas. And this particular fertilizer plant had a mishap. And that mishap caused an explosion that basically leveled approximately a quarter mile around from the particular plant. I believe at least 4 people were killed and a lot of people injured. And the only reason that more people weren't killed is that the town that that plant was in was extremely small. Now, it was fortunate that that explosion occurred at night, because within the blast radius were 3 schools and a bunch of residences, and for whatever reason, a lot of people survived, even though they were in really close proximity to that plant when it exploded. And the thing about Texas is the environmental controls that are in place around the country, in places like Los Angeles and New York, and pretty much any community that really has the safety of its citizens in mind, there are environmental protections and permits that allow and do not allow certain activities. Well, Texas is one of those states that you can basically put any kind of a plant anywhere. So you can be producing C4 explosives right in the middle of the busiest city in the state of Texas, and not even have to obtain any type of a governmental permit other than whatever is required by the feds when producing C4. So things like fertilizer, you don't need permits on. But we all know that fertilizer is a major component for explosive ordinances. And if you don't believe me, just remember what happened in Oklahoma City, where they had a car packed full of fertilizer and another chemical, and when they lit that puppy up, it blew half the building out, killed a lot of people. So anyway, I digress. Coming back to West Texas, at least 4 people killed, quarter of a mile leveled, etc., etc., etc. Now, they didn't need building any type of permits for the production of the fertilizer, but they were required by law to submit forms stating exactly what they were producing and how much in supplies that they had. That was a requirement by law. Like I said, was a requirement by law. After the explosion, for some unknown reason, Attorney General Abbott helped push through a law that no longer required any chemical company to provide that information upon request to the public. So now, whereas before, if you moved into an area and you knew there was a chemical plant there, you could go to the plant and request a copy of, the information as to what they were building and how much they normally had on hand. And if you had any kind of pushback, you could always go to the state, because it was a requirement for that information to be on file with the state, and get it from them. Well, Mr. Abbott felt that that was too overbearing on the chemical companies. So that got killed. Why do I bring that up? I bring it up because in Houston, there are not one, but two chemical plants that are in close proximity. And because of the flooding, these chemical plants are in danger of exploding. And the level of damage from the explosions at this moment is not publicly known because of the change in the law, and the company is pushing back as far as providing that information to the public. And obviously the state is not going to come up and provide that information. Let me read you this particular story. Chemicals at flooded Texas plant in danger of exploding. A chemical plant just northeast of Houston is at risk of explosion following the failure of refrigeration equipment that is needed to cool the volatile compounds produced there. The CEO of Arkema Inc., Rich Rowe, said Wednesday the Crosby, Texas facility is flooded by 6 feet of water and that both primary and backup power have failed. Without cooling systems, the risk of fire and explosion grows ever more serious. The high water and lack of power leave us with no way to prevent it, Mr. Rowe said. The residential community surrounding the facility has been evacuated in a 1.5-mile radius. According to the EPA, nearly 4,000 people live within a 3-mile radius. The chemical facility, too, is abandoned since the last 11 employees who had remained to try to keep the products from igniting were pulled out. The chemicals have already warmed to a point where their volatility prevents an effort to move them, Rowe said. We're really blocked from taking any meaningful action. The plant manufactures highly combustible organic peroxides, which are used in a wide variety of applications from agriculture to manufacturing. They're used in making epoxy resins for glass reinforced plastics like fiberglass. They also used to make explosives. Locating chemical and fertilizer plants next to residential areas is not all that uncommon in Texas. In 2013, the West Fertilizer Company in the small town of West Texas, just south of Dallas, exploded, killing 12, okay, I was wrong on the 4, killing 12 first responders and 3 others and injuring 160. Property damage to the surrounding neighborhoods was extensive. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives eventually ruled that fire was deliberately set. The water poured onto the blaze by the volunteer firemen very likely facilitated the explosion, which blew up with the force of between 7.5 and 10 tons of TNT. Like many, but not all, of these volatile facilities, West Fertilizer was built on what was initially isolated agrarian land. But as Texas grew in the ensuing decades, the town of West expanded towards and eventually around the plant. Okay, folks, but the story didn't go into the fact that they are no longer were no longer required to let the people that live in the area know exactly what was going on with them, what they had in there, and basically any information whatsoever. So now, thank God that the materials did not blow up before they had a chance to evacuate. But based on their own employee statement, it's just a question of time before that plant explodes. And hopefully it doesn't do too much damage to the surrounding area outside of approximately a mile or so. Now, what they didn't mention in this story is there's another plant that is within the general vicinity of Arkema. And that plant also makes volatile chemicals that have the possibility of explosion. And that plant also is underwater and has lost power. So we're looking at potentially not one, but two major explosions in the Houston area. And the people that lived in the vicinity of these plants had no idea what was going on because the Attorney General and now Governor didn't believe that it was anybody's business that you were living next to something that could take your life. All right. That's enough about the taking of lives. Now, how about the changing of life? How about the ruining of lives? Texas has passed a law regarding sanctuary cities, declaring them illegal. And with that being said, people, albeit illegal, who are facing life and death situations from the flooding have no options. They need to attempt to save their lives. And more than likely, they're going to try to make it to some type of a shelter. Well, based on the law, if they tried to make it to a shelter, they could be asked for proof of citizenship. Racial profiling, anybody? So if you were of a Mexican heritage and a U.S. citizen, Joe Stormtrooper, positioned outside of the shelter, would have, quote unquote, the right to ask you to prove your citizenship. And if you couldn't, there would be consequences, all the way up to being illegally deported. Well, the mayor of Houston and several surrounding towns have stated emphatically that they will not allow this to happen. And the mayor of Houston has said, and he's an attorney, has said that he would personally defend anyone that the ICE people attempted to perpetrate that profiling and take into custody for deportation, whether legal or not. Now, if they're legal, over a period of time, that piece would get sorted out. But being illegal, yeah, they could be taken away, put in I guess, a different detention center, and then deported. Well, fortunately, a federal judge has come down and declared the illegalization of Houston and any city in Texas that declares itself a sanctuary city. A federal judge has stated that their status remains intact, and he has basically struck down Texas's law outlawing sanctuary cities. Now, you would think, with everything going on, that the governor would basically let this thing slide until the situation, as far as the rain throughout the southern and eastern Texas, basically gets resolved and people are able to get back to normal. But no. Governor Abbott has immediately stated that he will appeal that judge's ruling with all the strength that he can muster. So again, folks, I say to you, Republican Governor Greg Abbott is piece of work.